to an extra special season opening edition of Pitching In. I'm Jason Mackey alongside Michael Mckenry as always, and you will see now that we are joined by our first guest. You know who he is. You've seen him. You've watched him. Greg Brown. And I feel silly, Brownie, doing the introductions here. I should not be the one introducing anybody. You should be the one introducing people, but thank you for coming on and doing it.
I feel silly being introduced. I feel silly being your first guest. I feel honored. This show is taking the world by storm. And for me
sorry,
to be...
you must have clicked on the wrong link. This is,
shoot! Wait, who is this?
So we have lots of stuff to talk about. Fort, I'm sorry, I'm moving on with the show. How are you doing, sir?
It's okay. I'm just a hobbit in the corner. No big deal.
You're not a hobbit in the corner. You're a hobbit on a chair.
That's true. That's true. No, Brownie, there's nobody we'd rather have than you as our first guest. So welcome. I'm honored. You've been an absolute legend to me, and I'm excited to talk some ball with you with a little bit of unfiltered ability. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, it is my honor, Fort and J-Mac. Thanks for having me on your show. And you do look like a hobbit. You're in that dark corner there, Fort.
Mm-hmm. And I got my friend. See my friend?
Nice.
It's Pirate Pete right there.
That's great.
What is that, Fort? We've been doing this now for, 6-8 weeks or whatever, and I've not asked you what is that thing?
So, Mackie, me and my brother are very different. So I have two half brothers, and one of my brothers is an atheist, and that's a little bit different than me. And when I was about 16, he got me the strangest gifts, this being one of them.
Okay.
Just a random gift for Christmas, a skull. I didn't know if it was somebody he killed and decided, hey, I'm going to glass him up and give him to you just to let you know, or if it was just a cool gift. It was just a cool gift. Now I have all kinds of weird stuff. Some of it may be a little, out of the boundaries of my beliefs, but I appreciate the gifts, and I had to kind of show off my man Pistol right here. Okay. Pistol Pete. We were just talking about Pistol Pete, so I figured I'd call him Pete the Pirate. He's got a name now. Thanks, Brownie. That's for you.
That's great. Thank you, Fort.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so we have a lot to talk about actual baseball-wise because, well, drum roll, we're having actual baseball. Long overdue. It's been a long spring training. I don't know about you guys. Brownie, you've been down for the entire time. Fort, you made a foray into Florida, but boy, it felt longer this year. I know it was longer, but we've been conditioned to the shorter ones. It was nice to get back to a little bit of normalcy. I don't know. Are you guys ready for opening day as much as I am?
Well, I'm always ready for it. For me, even though we're in toward the home stretch of Lent, this is Christmas Eve for me and most baseball fans. I will literally have a very difficult time sleeping tonight. Our present is the gates opening at this ballpark to see the bunting as we did, J-Mac, during the workout around this historic. Well, the ballpark isn't necessarily historic, but opening day in Cincinnati is certainly historic. And, so you've got two legendary franchises opening up the 2023 National League Championship season. That's a broadcaster's dream, and I would assume a baseball fan's dream. So, yeah, I'm ready for it. I will say that for me, it was one of the quickest spring trainings I've ever been involved in. I've been going to spring training in Bradenton, Florida for a long, long time. And even though I was down there almost 2 months, and I got to tell you, I said it before, I'll say it again, and you'll watch this, I believe, as this goes on. It is the greatest rule change, at least since the three-point play in the NBA. It might literally be, and I'm not being hyperbolic, this is not exaggeration, the greatest rule change in the history of sports. It is an absolute game changer. I fell in love with the game of baseball. I'm old enough to have been watching baseball since the 70s and 80s, ancient times. But I fell in love with the game because at that time, they were 2.5 to 240 games. And that's what baseball has presented itself. It's unbelievable. I was very skeptical at the start, but they sold me on it.
I was talking to another writer earlier this spring, and I wish I could remember who, because I would give he or she credit, but they said something like it's going to be Rob Manfred's legacy. No matter all of the other things that have like gone wrong with baseball or challenges that it's had, that you talk about the pitch clock. And Brownie, I agree with you. I think it's such a game changer. It makes baseball what it should be, and that is available and entertaining to a mainstream audience. And it's just, I don't want to see 3 hour and 30-minute games. I think Fort might have a slightly different opinion on this, but I give Manfred and Major League Baseball such credit for their obviously bold moves that, my goodness, spring training sailed along.
Fort?
Guys, I'm not going to give Rob Manfred too much credit, but I do like the rule changes. I just don't like all the times. And me and Brownie, we've talked about that. Mackie, we've talked about that. I just think you're giving baseball players too much credit, that they're maybe too intuitive to what's going on when we get so routine driven. So, take out the 9, take out the 8, keep it simple, give a basic time when a guy needs to be on the rubber, when a guy needs the box, and just keep it absolutely as simple as possible. So these guys create a good routine behind it and they back it, because there is a balance. I've said the stepbrother syndrome is a problem. It has been a problem, will be a problem for a long time with MLB, MLBPA. They're always going to fight, even if it's the right thing. They're going to fight just to fight. That's the reality. So I think finding that balance is really important. And I did like the rule change. I loved it live, watching this live, and especially I thought I wouldn't like the shift change. I thought it was actually a huge gift to the guys that can actually maybe cover some ground, that can read a swing and tell if a guy's late or not. They're taking a step left, step right. But Brownie, I wanted to throw out a rule real quick, and me and Mackie talked about this maybe a little bit off air, but there was a rule that was presented, and I think it would have been the best rule that never saw any light, and that's no technology, no binders, nothing in the dugout during the game. Brownie, we talked about that during spring training. I want to hear Mackie's thoughts on it too, because I think that in general would have changed the game, because it really allows guys to say, hey, I'm ready, I'm prepared, and then go out and play the game. What's the game telling you? You have to start pitching to the scoreboard. You can't pitch to the analytic department. You literally have to focus on what's happening right in front of you, and you can't rely on a binder or an iPad or a tablet. You're literally playing the game like it was intended. I think that would also be a great way to speed up the game.
Well, maybe that's next. I don't know. What do you think, J-Mac?
I don't like it. I don't like it, Brownie. I would be on the page or in favor of limiting it to, like, you can only stay in the dugout or you can only have so many things. But I think about the NFL, the NHL, the NBA. They're all using technology. I mean, look at a quarterback when he comes on the sideline. He used to look at, printed out pictures or whatever, but now they're grabbing a tablet. You can dislike it, but if all of a sudden you're a professional baseball player and they say no tech whatsoever, I don't know. That's just, it's not congruent with other professional sports. Now, if you say you can't go back into the video room, you can't go back into the clubhouse, you can't consult with whomever you want to consult with, like, it has to be confined to whatever is available in the dugout. I'd be okay with that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to say this. Forever, baseball has been chasing other sports, and it has angered me. You could point to so many things. Instant replay comes to mind because it was in the NFL and then the NBA, NHL. Baseball had to do it, always chasing other sports. It drives me crazy. I believe that this rule change, the speed up rules, is so seismic that finally other sports are going to be scrambling to chase baseball. This is, I'm telling you, people have no idea, because we've watched spring training, but most people don't watch spring training baseball. I mean, casually, the fans come out down in Bradenton or around us. But once we get into the regular season and you start seeing marquee matchups, this is a game changer, and other sports are going to have to say, whoa, wait a second. I just can't stand that baseball chases these other sports. I say, Fort, you're right. COVID was the worst thing that could have happened. Was one of the best things that could have happened, because it stopped the iPads. People were so freaked out. They took iPads out of the dugout like that was going to cause some issue, but then they brought them back. I would love to see them, no technology, force the players to watch the game again, and maybe they'll be forced anyway because the game is going to go so fast. Maybe they'll just organically start watching the game again and keep their faces out of these iPads. Watch this beautiful game of baseball.
And that's a really good point. And Brownie, something that both of you guys have to deal with, and I've just seen it just a little bit, is you guys have to produce a product. Brownie, you're doing it in real time, and Mackie, you're writing. And both things rely on being able to see the game. And it's hard even to look down at your phone without missing a pitch. So how does that kind of change some things? Because I watched the broadcast, Brownie, and it is fast. You know, I watched our producers sweating bullets, and I understand that there is maybe some balance. There is some lead. A lot of teams didn't get as much action as we did. You know, we do a great job of getting on the air in spring. I think I saw Baltimore got on TV twice. Do you think there's going to be some hiccups early on with that? Because the reality of it is they have not had that pace. They have not felt that pace. And you're talking at a national level, not at a spring training level. And that's with writers, that's with broadcasters, that's from kind of a whole perspective. Because there's times where I didn't get to hear some great insight from KY or Walk. They cut off. And there's a balance there that's, in my opinion, the biggest shift in sports when it comes to baseball, because that's the part that's really hard, because time's actually been taken away from you guys.
Yeah. Which is it when it comes to listening to me, it's a good thing. So
no, stop it.
Yeah. And honestly, all this has done is it shaved 26 minutes off average time of game in spring training. I don't know if it probably will be close during the regular season, because I think they're sticking to their guns. All it has done is shown us all, including the players themselves. I can't believe the buy-in from just about every single one of them. It has been seamless from all of them, but it has shown us the waste of time and the nonsense that went on time and time again. And unfortunately, I think for the most part, it was just the advent of television when baseball was in its heyday, when I fell in love with it, and television ratings were through the roof. I think players started to realize, you know what? If I walk up slowly to that plate, if I have a little thing I do, that camera's going to be on me a little longer, and those announcers are going to have to talk about us a little longer. Those pitchers that would come in, some would come in slowly, some would sprint, some would find different things to do. Al Raboski, the Mad Hungarian, I love the guy, but he had his shtick that he would do. He'd get the baseball to the back of the mound and bend down and rub it up and then pound his fist and march up to the top of the rubber. It was all these shticks that these guys would do, and that just lengthened the game. It takes away from the me, I, which I can't stand, and it focuses on the great thing about baseball is it's pitcher versus batter. There's no getting around it. You can't cherry pick in baseball. Like every other sport, you can avoid the action at some point during the game. Football's so specialized, you don't go on the field half the time. NBA, you could cherry pick. You don't have to play defense to a degree. Hockey, you know that, Jason, better than I do. But you can't do it you cannot hide. And this forces all of us to watch that specific moment, which it's intended for. It's pitcher versus batter all the time. It forces us all to watch that moment.
So true story. I have two things from my perspective. I think a lot of people maybe listening to this know that I cut out of the last day of spring training early. I drove down here. I wanted to get here for this workout, whatever. So I'm watching the broadcast on my phone while driving through Georgia, Kentucky, whatever.
Now, you don't condone that. You don't condone doing that.
That's right, Brownie. That's right. But I'm watching you and KY, and you guys go through the first 3 innings, and I'm like doing the math in my head. Like, this game's getting done under 2 hours. This game's going to get done in an hour and 45 minutes. Like, it ended up slowing down, but I start to think, what's going to happen whenever we get into the regular season and there's not a billion substitutions? Maybe there's a game where a pitcher is really rolling, maybe a game against another pitcher who's really rolling, not throwing a bunch of pitches like that, the old, 2-1, 1-0 game that finishes. Maybe the home team doesn't bat in the bottom of the ninth. Like, we're going to get a game under 2 hours.
Easy. No doubt about
it. I just, the lower limit, I'll say it that way, of how quick these things can go, it's just wild. Like, I know from a writer's perspective, I haven't even adjusted to it. Like, I have to write a story during a game and file something as soon as the game ends. So when the game's 3.5 hours long, I have a lot of time to sit there and write and craft and copy edit and put it into content management system and all these other things that people don't need to care about. But like when the game's 2 hours and 10 minutes, you're just trying to keep up. You're just trying to watch all the action on the field. So, I mean, it's a good adjustment to make. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But, like you guys, like people on radio or whatever, it's certainly required an adjustment.
Well, we've got to be much more concise with what we say. I think on television, in fact, I talked to Joe Block about this today. We need to really be concise and allow, especially on television, the color analyst to take center stage and give him that opportunity, because you're right, that game. And Fort, this, I said this before the telecast, the final game, which was yesterday, whenever that was, down in Florida, that historically, that last game of spring training, players, coaches, umpires want to get the heck out of there, get onto their planes, and so with the speed up rule, you're right, Jason. But you know what slowed it down, by the way? What slowed it down? People quit throwing strikes. The double, the double A players, the players that were not going to make the team, that aren't going to sniff. No disrespect. Many of those players, both teams, are not going to sniff the big leagues, maybe ever.
That's what I mean. When you get into the regular season, you're going to have guys there. And what happens when it's truly clicking like that?
Graham Ashcraft, who pitches on Sunday for the Reds, his last start in Arizona was 1 hour and 52 minutes.
Oh, goodness.
They loved it. They talked about it. That's the thing about this. If the players are realizing, my goodness, we wasted time. Yeah. Nonsense. And it's fantastic. Keep in mind, as I said, when I fell in love with the game in the 70s and 80s, there were games oftentimes that went 2.5 and sometimes 2 hours. Steve Blass talks about it forever, about all the games that he's pitched against Seaver that went, barely over 2 hours. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I got one more thing, Mackie, before we jump into the Pirates. Where does it go next? For me, it has to be branding of the players, because you talk about Steve Blass's day. You really think about how they promoted those guys. Like if you were going into New York, it seemed like they set up the Friday night for the two best guys to go head to head, or that's at least how they would promote it. Like the Mike Trout and Ohtani matchup in the World Baseball Classic, I think brought back the 1920s for me. You go in, Babe Ruth versus so-and-so, come tonight, don't miss it.
Back the 1920s for it, like you were around for them.
I have a time machine, guys.
I was not.
You know that. I do go back in time sometimes and go watch these games.
Nice.
They're outstanding. Nice. I put my suit on, my top hat. I like my hats, Brownie, and I go watch these games. So that's where I get it. It's just completely natural. It's part of my soul. That's how it happens. But no, for real, like you watch these old-timey movies, and that's kind of what they did. They promoted the players differently. And I think for me, that's the missing element. That's what's next, because we should fall in love as fans, which I've become a huge fan of baseball, with different guys and their quirky personalities. Like Brian Reynolds doesn't say a lot. Key Brian Hayes doesn't say a lot. Maybe they don't like being on camera, but they have a personality, and there's kids out there that are just like him. So promote that, brand that. And I always say, if nothing else, if you're a Pirate right now and you're in the front office and you don't want to sign David Bednar, you're absolutely insane, because the guy brings butts in the seats because of his personality. There's a two-headed monster in the game. There's performance, and now there's also this actual production that we need to pay attention to, because guys that have personality, it plays out really, really well. Great example is Andrew McCutchen. We led in Twitter. We led in Facebook this offseason in all social media analytics. And that should say enough about how much a personality can play. And I think that's the next animal. But here's the kicker. MLBPA, MLB will never see eye to eye with that. How do we break that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the pitch clock does, at least for me, it puts baseball in and I said this earlier, a more easily digestible format to the casual fans. Like the three of us are going to watch because we care. We love the sport. Like they could take away the pitch clock and it would be 3.5 hours. We'd still watch because we're truly invested. But people who aren't, people who are just channel surfing or may just say, I'm intrigued by what the Pirates are doing, and they click it on and they're like, holy crap, wow, there's no just dead time. Like a personal story, my wife struggled with baseball a lot, thought it was boring, that there wasn't a lot of action happening. Games that I've showed her with the pitch clock, it's completely different. Like it almost forces you to pay attention because, again, you're going to see athletes making great plays. You're going to see excellent performances and all that stuff. You're just not going to have to wait to see more of it. And I think, to me, that's a truly attractive option. And I think that'll help the whole sport grow in popularity.
I think you're right, Fort, also about the growing the game by highlighting personalities. I was just on a Zoom call, other broadcasters for MLB to go over the rules. We went through a rule situation before the season, spring training, and now just went through an exercise post spring training, and they rolled out their ad campaign, and it looks like they're doing just what you're talking about. Baseball is something else, which I love that tagline, and I think they're going to promote the heck out of it. So maybe they're thinking what you're thinking.
It seems like they're going that direction. If you go on and look at MLB hiring, everything that they're looking at, it looks like branding is number one across the board. So I'm excited that maybe they're coming together, MLBPA and MLB, the Step Brothers, they come together and really collaborate, make this work, because I think Newt Bar playing on Japan's team and gaining over 900,000 followers is great for the game. I think if we can kind of repeat that over and over again, what would the game look like in 2 to 3 years and the popularity of it across the world?
I love the WBC. I thought that the Ohtani Trout thing, and I know that Mad Dog Russo, who's one of my heroes, does a show daily on the MLB Network. He got just crucified for saying it was overrated. But it's great that it expanded the game, because the argument is, well, you know how many people in Japan watch that? Well, that's great, but I want people watching it here too. So, and what's going to happen? And I'd say, to me, shame on baseball. I think they missed the boat. They should have rolled out these rule changes in the World Baseball Classic when they had this incredible audience.
They should have.
They missed this opportunity, because I think baseball is going to grow exponentially based on these rule changes. When people, to your point, Jason, your wife, people are going to start trying the game out that may never have before, because it's no longer an excuse. Baseball's boring. I've never thought it was boring. Like you said, Jason, we went 3.5 hours, 4 hours. It was not boring. A lot happened. But now, to the casual fan, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you better believe there's a lot happening.
I actually thought, Brownie, sort of the inverse of what you're saying with the WBC. Watching those games, I found myself wishing they had the new rules, saying like,
that's what I mean.
And no pitch clock. Like, hurry it up. Let's go.
Yeah.
We're spoiled.
And they missed the boat.
And hey, Brownie, on your point with Mad Dog, I think if they did a better job of showing those historic events and showing those historic games, I think people would fall in love with some of the things that he was saying, because that was his WBC moment. It's just as a younger baseball fan, you're looking at what's right in front of you. And if you don't know many players, the players you do know are Ohtani and Trout, because of the two guys that are talked about quite a bit. So with Mad Dog, if he could have presented that matchup he was talking about, I can't remember exactly which one it was, and show the comparison and why it was so important in that moment and where baseball was, I think he could have had an argument. But he got destroyed because he's fighting with a bunch of people that just know one side.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's one thing that, like, when I came to Pittsburgh, and you guys know a lot more about the rich history of Pittsburgh, I've fallen in love with the history of baseball here. From the Negro Leagues to the 70s, all the way through the 90s, even the losing, and kind of how the fans just took their arms, put them around. It's like, we still love you, but figure it out already. And I've fallen in love with the city because of that. But you don't get that unless you want to have it, unless it's available. Being at AT&T, it's been available. I've gotten to see it. Rob King is an actual history buff when it comes to Pirates history. Brownie, J-Mac, you guys have helped me see some things. And I think if the casual fan saw that, they would fall in love with this game even more, because it is America's pastime. It does matter here. It never needs to leave that. I thought we lost it in COVID, and we're fighting to get it back.
All right. So I'm gonna steer the conversation a little different way, Fort and Brownie, if that's cool. So I'm in.
We were just changing the world right there. No big deal.
What's that?
We're just changing the world right there.
Yeah, I know. You're solving problems, but I'm trying to Brownie's a very busy man. I'm also in the middle of a luxury suite that I probably should not be in Great American Ballpark. And I'm sorry, Cincinnati Reds, for taking this for an hour, but I am.
Don't be sorry to them. Please don't.
I guarantee you I'm not supposed to be where I'm at right now, but that's all right. So we watched a workout. We watched various parts of spring training. We've kicked around storylines. There's been questions. There are still questions. Sure, there could be a new player in the opening day lineup or in the opening day bullpen or whatever, and I don't think it would shock any of the three of us. Fort, you and I have been kicking around stuff on this show, so I want to pose it to Brownie. But Brownie, what are you most curious to see about this team when they open it up tomorrow?
Well, I want to see what Cruz's numbers look like at the end of a season where he gets 500 plus at bats.
Yeah.
It could be historic, could be something we've never seen before. It's likely to be something we've never seen before. Knock on wood, he stays healthy. That's probably what intrigues me the most about this team. Obviously taking a step forward, but he's just such a freak, such a unicorn that we've never seen it before. He came up in June last year, middle to late June last year, and put up pretty strong numbers. You can see him maturing, knowing what he can hit, and so I guess that's it in a nutshell for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Brownie. And my eyes during spring training saw some better at bats, some better defense, some better movement of his feet, consistent. I mean, obviously he has some work to do in those areas, but I don't know. If he can take even a couple steps forward, my goodness, is he going to be so fun to watch this summer. What do you got for it? What do you think?
I'm going to go to the reason I think that all happens is partially because of the Santana signing. I think giving him a older Dominican player to lean on was really, really important, because it's easy to get carried away when you're getting national attention to get caught up in that. And it didn't seem like he was last year, but coming into spring training, I mean, the last time we got that much hype on any player was Andrew McCutchen, and he had just won the MVP, getting that much hype. This guy's getting it, and he hasn't even played a full year in the big league. So that shows the talent level. And I think bringing in a guy like Santana, who's had national hype, who's played in the playoffs, who's, put up some tremendous numbers and been an all-star, I think it's been somebody he's been able to lean on, but also Santana's been willing to speak up.
Yeah.
And speak life into him. And I like the signings, and that's what's been intriguing to me is seeing how these signings play off, maybe not on the field, but with some of these guys around him. I think that's going to be really exciting to see, because that was something I hadn't seen in the last probably 4 or 5 years, and you guys can correct me, where there was an AJ Burnett pulling lock everywhere he went. And I watched Rich Hill be at almost every bullpen. I watched JT Brubaker kind of floating around, being around these guys. Keller, all these guys were around trying to help the younger guys. And that's something that's really grown. And that I mentality that you're talking about, Brownie, is starting to die. And I saw that firsthand from the coaching to the players. And it's an easy game now to get very specific and become me, because that's how they hand the reports. Here's your offensive report. Here's your defensive report. It's not here's your team report anymore. It's not a scouting report. It's a personal report. And it's easy to think about yourself, think about the numbers, think about the money that you can make down the line. But these guys seem to really have put something together where they brought in guys that want to win and that want to pour into the young guys, and the young guys are pouring into the young guys, which that for me is when things get really special.
Ford, I'm glad you brought up the not me, but we kind of thing. I have a story. I think it's going to go live online tomorrow. It's the main bar of our preview section, but a big chunk of it is talking to Andrew McCutchen about that exact mentality and that shift. And literally the quote he says in there is not me, but we. And like, that's where this team is at, where we need to focus on what can I do to help this team win? More so than it is like, oh, I'm in the big leagues. It's fun. Yeah, I get to do this. Oh, look at me. It's more, okay, we're serious now. We've brought in these guys. Not that anybody's propping up a pennant chase, but, I do think the standard of expectations has changed throughout spring training. I hope they've changed. I mean, certainly what we've seen the past few seasons just shouldn't be acceptable. I just think there's certain mechanisms of change or ways to get there that we need to see. We need to see better pitching. We need to see O'Neal Cruz take steps forward. We need to see better defense. I think they're all within their class, but who knows if they actually happen. So, okay. I'll throw out a question to both of you guys. I get asked this one a lot. I debate it. I'm not sure. Who ends up leading the Pirates pitching staff in wins, i.e. who becomes their most effective pitcher this season? What do you guys think?
I think it's Keller.
Yeah.
Just based on what I've seen. We talked about, a guy that is a horse. He is, unless you're close up to him, he's got that boyish look to him, facially speaking. But boy, as you guys know, you get close to that guy, is solid. He is a big man, and I just think he's due for. I don't think it was a fluke how he turned his career around.
Yeah.
In early June last year. So I say he's the winner in terms of who's the best pitcher, the Steve Blass Award winner at the end of the year.
Brownie, I'm going to have to go right along with you. Now, most wins, guys, I'm going to go with DeYoung because of the way the game's set up. And if you look back,
mad at myself for evaluating the best pitcher based on wins.
Yeah, I got to throw that out there. One of the relievers is going to have the most wins. It'll either be DeYoung or Crow, or it could be maybe the Rule 5 pick and Hernandez. We'll see. But one of those guys will have the most wins. But Keller, in my opinion, is maybe one of the most impressive growth mindsets I've ever seen in Major League Baseball. He had all the ability. He was kind of coddled all the way through the minor leagues and was able to have success, very much like Glasnow, Tyon. These guys were very much coddled and protected. Then they get the big leagues and they get punched in the face and they don't know what to do. Well, this kid got punched down, picked himself up, punched down, picked himself up, and then he got success. And instead of being enthralled in it, right? I think it was 2020 through, was it 10 innings hitless, something like that in the season?
Yep.
The numbers were terrible. It was really, it was incredible to watch. But if you look behind the scenes, the numbers were terrible. He was getting hit really hard. There was a lot of luck involved. He understood that, and they went to the drawing board and continued to grow. And a kid that's willing to do that over and over again, the sky's the limit, and he's not stopping. He already added a new pitch. He's going to tomorrow with a pitch the Reds have never seen, and he keeps getting better because he wants to. And that's a leader, and he's literally doing it by example. I don't think he's a guy that's a raw outspoke, but he's a guy that's going to continue to get better and push the limits for everyone else around him.
Brownie, do you remember his first start? I'm sure you do. And I remember covering it. It was my first road trip for the Post-Gazette. I joined Bill Brink here, and like he just looked like deer in headlights, kind of, early on, and then he settled down nice.
I actually asked him about that today, and he kind of chuckled. But I also remember the curious decision. To this day, I don't get it. You got a guy making his major league debut. You have a doubleheader
game.
I think it was a day-night doubleheader.
Yes.
Why on earth would you make that guy sit around? That is the most ridiculous. Pirates did a lot of great things over the years, but they did a lot of dumb things over the years. And there's no one. I don't care what anybody said. I don't care what anybody says. That was one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen. I don't get it.
And he sat in the hotel. If I'm wrong, right?
Hotel.
Sat in the hotel. Watched his first major league game in a hotel room. That boggles my mind. Boggles my mind.
I was actually,
and again, I'm going to make sure people understand that was the previous regime. They did great things. I admire them. Friends with a lot of them. But that was one that stood out for me. There were some curious decisions, and that was one in my book. Personally, I don't get.
I completely agree. And Brownie, I was on one half of those a lot in my career. And it makes a difference. I mean, think about putting a kid that's going to make his debut and say, hey, we're going to put you in this room with a TV. You're going to watch your team play. And then about 7 to 10 hours later, we want you to show up to the ballpark and be like, hey, I'm here, guys. But the night before, he's out to dinner with his boys celebrating that he's here. It's not a brilliant move. If nothing else, just have him at the ballpark. Watching it inside.
I mean, Just things. I know you feel the same way for it, and I imagine you too, Jason. That I'm all for the numbers that you crunch and everything else, but doggone it, you've got to realize that these guys, what they do and how they got there, and creatures of habit and routines. I mean, to me, that would be like Ford taking a reigning MVP who hit in a 3 spot and all of a sudden bat him second and tell him to play shallow center field. I mean, that's kind of crazy talk, isn't it?
Or just move in positions entirely.
Yeah,
right?
I could do that too. Yeah,
without
play a
telling
different
him.
position. You win a Gold Glove, go somewhere else. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, he has to go to the front office and say, "Hey, what's left field all about?" Yeah, that's usually not a good sign when they're coming to you. You should always go to them.
Yeah, again, that's one of the situations where numbers say this guy should hit second because he gets more ABs and all the other stuff, but take into account what that number 3 hole meant to this particular player.
And since you brought that up, and I brought this up to the Pirates brass, so like no hard feelings, it's the Brian Reynolds effect. You don't move a guy from a position when you're trying to sign him to a long-term contract, unless he says, "I want to move to left field." It's just my personal thought.
I'll debate you. I'll debate you on that.
I want to hear a debate because when I brought it up, I said this. Here, let me get my thoughts out to you, Brownie. So, Brian Reynolds 2 years ago was a Gold Glove contender in center field. Okay, we have a smaller center field than we do left fielder, so technically the better outfielder should be 82 games playing center field, not left field. Now, last year he had Diego Castillo, he had Phillip Evans, he had multiple guys that were learning how to play the outfield in the major leagues. He almost got killed 3 to 4 times. And then he had to deal with Cruz, who covers most of the outfield from shortstop, which is kind of remarkable to me because he's not human. He's a unicorn. So you put all that in perspective, his numbers shift, and we move him because Sawinski has 3.5 months in the big leagues and a plus defensive matrix number at a different position, not center field, at left and right. Make it make sense, right? When you're trying to sign a guy to a long-term contract. That's like saying, Key Bryan, we're going to move you to second base. Actually, I could actually make an argument with this. Key Bryan, we're going to move you to shortstop. He wants to play third base.
Oh, boy.
The matrix will show you and tell you he will be better at shortstop. Why not move him? Why? Because O'Neal Cruz at shortstop. You don't actually want to move that guy because you want to say, hey, we're going to give you every chance because we want to sign you. And then after that fact, we'll try to move you because you may have a better shortstop defensively if you look at it.
Wait, no, okay. You're saying
I went like this, didn't I?
No, well, yeah. Now all of a sudden you did the J-Mac whip around here.
This is going to be good.
You're suggesting then that you tell the player, since we're trying to sign you to a long-term deal, you're our man at this position. But then once we sign you, now we're going to talk about moving the position. That doesn't. I don't buy that.
You can't kill 2 birds with 1 stone in the situation.
I don't think you're being honest with the player then.
No,
I don't think you're being. The long term, what's best suited for the Pirates long term is to have a. Reynolds did a fine job holding down the fort in center field. A fine job.
Correct.
He's a better left fielder just by the eye test. I don't think anybody would argue that. I don't want to hear the metrics. I think by the eye test, you can see the left fielder. What's that?
They would support a move to left, by the way.
Okay, well,
and he would too. And that's what
that's
I'm
all
trying
well
to say.
And good.
Like,
if you're going to win, you're going to win Major League Baseball games for it. You've got to have your best center fielder in there every single day.
With that argument, how was outfield play this spring?
Terrible.
Okay, so let me make an argument.
It comes with a caveat. It was terrible the first 3 weeks. The last couple weeks, much improved.
I completely agree, but they were floating back and forth. The last
no. Reynolds was in left. Reynolds was in left, and they put him in center field to let them know that if we need somebody to play center to give whoever the center fielder is a day off, we know Reynolds can play there. Reynolds is your left fielder. That was why they moved Reynolds to left field last year. At the very end, they went to him, they asked him, and unless they're not telling, I believe them when they tell us Reynolds was fine with it.
And he was.
Because Reynolds is a team player. He wants the team to win.
I agree. I'm just saying they always need to be open and honest with the player and find a balance. And here's the thing is they need to open up Pandora's box of like, this is why we want to do this. Because that's what happened when he moved to center.
Well, who's to say they didn't do that? Who's to say they didn't say, listen?
Well, maybe I know a little bit more than I should.
What's best for the career? What's best for your career is to play left field. It's best for the team. You're going to last longer there. And let's face it, he's more of a he's got he's a prototypical left fielder. I mean,
I don't disagree with you, but it's not best for his career when it comes to money.
Wait. Okay, now we add another layer.
No.
Yeah, so his agent's fighting for one thing, the team's fighting for the other, and that's the reality of where the sport is. That's what I said. MLB, MLB, BPA will never see eye to eye on this agreement, so you have to tread lightly. It's the same way as, like, I think Kutch is our best right fielder this year. Like,
I think Kutch is the best DH this year. I don't know that Kutch is
I still think he's got it in his tank to play.
No, I'm just saying, and for his health.
Play right. Excuse me.
Yeah, for his health. I'm not saying he couldn't play right field. I'm sure he could, but he didn't play much outfield last year with Milwaukee, if you look at the numbers. So anyway,
but they won more games when he played in the outfield, is what I'm saying.
What's that?
But in Milwaukee, they won more games when he was in the outfield than when he wasn't.
But what's best for the players to keep him healthy?
Agreed. But you got to ask him that.
And I assume they do. I'm not going to assume they don't.
They don't.
And
a lot of teams don't.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that
the Pirates are doing a great job. I want to tread lightly here. The Pirates are doing a tremendous job of going to the player. I'm just saying, prior to this regime, that would not have been communication with Brian Reynolds. There was a communication with Brian Reynolds. It took a little bit of time for him to say, okay, yeah, I do agree with left, because he was the one that pushed for center, right? It wasn't them, it was him. And then he went out and he dominated. And what I'm saying is, if Brian Reynolds wanted to play center and he said, I will be a Gold Glove contender, he's already proven that he could do that. Why would I bet against him? And I used Corey Dickerson. When he came here, he said, I want to play left. That's why he begged and begged. I want to be the left fielder. And I want to be good.
They were desperate for a left fielder. The Pirates had to
he was one of the worst outfielders analytically coming in, but they bet on him.
Right.
And that's what they're doing a very good job of. And I don't want them to lose sight of that.
I don't think they will.
I don't think they will. But they did lose sight of it this spring with Jack Sawinski because they put more pressure on him.
Well,
he was not ready.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. Jack's he's got a lot on his plate. There's no doubt about that.
And that's all I was saying is, like, when you dump it all at once, there's a lot more behind the scenes. I think the Pirates, and what I want to say is, they're doing it different. And that really impressed me when I was down there, is hearing how different and how open they're being, but also they're keeping things in-house better than they have in the past. So, like, I'm proud of it. I'm just saying, like, it's the same thing. Like, me and you could argue all day about O'Neal Cruz playing first.
Killed my job. Keep it in-house.
We could say, for me, O'Neal Cruz' best position may be first base, because I think it'll keep him on the field more. But, like, and I know you could make that argument too, Brownie, and probably you too, J-Mac, but if the kid doesn't want to do it right now, you're like, okay, let's see how far we can take this thing and give him an opportunity. And that's all I'm trying to say. Is, like, I always want to bet on the guy, and Reynolds the guy I would never bet against.
I want to do two things. I want to bet on the guy, but I want to bet on the team winning.
Amen.
That has to be the priority. And if down the road, I hope Cruz stays at shortstop for 20 years, wins Gold Gloves. But I hope the Pirates are winning games because of that. Because if they're not winning, ultimately, that's all that matters. And if the players' feelings get hurt, I'm sorry. You got to win.
Winning's all that matters.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly right.
I look at the Reynolds situation, guys. Like, you know, while you were talking, I looked up his defensive run saved, and among 51 outfielders last year who qualified, only 2 were worse: Jesse Winker, Kyle Schwarber. I mean, that's the kind of company we're talking about here. And to me, that's not somebody who needs to stay in center field. I think Brian Reynolds can be an above average, if not maybe elite, left fielder, especially at PNC Park. And I understand he probably would prefer to play center. I would prefer to hit the lottery. I'd prefer to do a lot of things. It's not.
You know, I just want to, J-Mac, I just want to make clear, and I'm not suggesting that Michael is not saying this, but Reynolds is so self-aware. To your point about those numbers, you don't think Reynolds is aware of that? That he wanted to play center. He was good, but as this season went on, I mean, I'm sure they get the metrics on this too in terms of the amount. I remember they talked about the amount of time. This was years ago. They talked about they kept some kind of a track on a player, his pacing from like the dugout to left or center or right.
Mm-hmm.
That's how detailed this is.
Yeah.
So Reynolds probably knows it. He probably didn't want to go back to the Pirates. I'm guessing all this, but probably didn't want to go back to the Pirates and say, listen, I love being out in center field, but this season's getting really long and it may be hurting my swing a little bit. I don't know. It's going to happen. And maybe he's the one that goes to them and says, and then they say, actually the numbers show you're probably better in left. Let's do that. That's possible.
Yeah, that is. And I think the more transparent they can be about that stuff, the better, because I think Brian Reynolds has a better chance to win a Gold Glove in left field at PNC. That's the reason Corey Dickerson won a Gold Glove. Yeah. That's why Marte was one of the best outfielders in all baseball, because it's a huge piece of land out there. It's the biggest size, I think, Kansas City. So it's an opportunity for him to have that freedom, not worry about running into guys. It gives him a lot of different things. I just wonder, how much it was him, how much it was them, because, if he wanted to play center, he's going to play center. If he wanted to play left, he's going to play left, because I wouldn't bet against him. And he's the surest hand, other than Swaggerty, I could say he's done it. And he looks like he's done it for a long time.
Swaggerty, let's face it, we got to hope Swaggerty kills it, because I think the best alignment might be Sawinski and right, and Swaggerty was by far the best center fielder. I didn't see a lot of Chavez Young. I know he's really good. But just finish up. You mentioned Marte, a great example. Marte was tremendous in left field. Mm-hmm. Gold Glove, wanted to play center. Mm-hmm. They moved him to center. We saw he's not as good a center fielder as he is a left fielder.
Correct. And they made a mistake buying into analytics that he'd be better in center. He wasn't. And they didn't ever move him back. They should have. You're exactly right, Brownie.
So what do you guys think about their overall defense? Do you think that's going to be in a place? I mean, it was so bad last year, but I don't know if it should have been that bad. Like, they were in the right places. I think they managed the shift well. Obviously, that's gone. I see Ke'Bryan Hayes at third. I see, honestly, O'Neal Cruz being a little bit better at short. I've made my peace with Reynolds in left. I think Austin Hedges is going to be very good behind the plate. I have zero thought, sense, whatever on first base. I guess it'll be better because it's hard to be worse. Not quite sure how I feel at second base. Like, is this team going to be serviceable defensively? And I think that's a really important idea with them too. Like, if they're going to win games, they have to be good there.
I'm going to say yes all the way around.
Yes, all the way around.
What about you, Brown?
Oh, you got it? Come on.
No, I think first base is a big kicker. I mean, we watched Choo-Choo turn a double play home to first the other day, and I don't think I saw that in the last 2 years. I really don't remember that play happening. And there was also an awesome double play by Santana where he cleared the lane, and I don't know if I've seen that for 4 years. So the fact that that's there, and then DeLay took a huge step forward as a backup guy, the way he was receiving this spring, there's a reason he beat Heineman. Heineman's numbers defensively were pretty much a full step above DeLay. Going into spring, DeLay got that much better. It looks like he's confident in himself. Hedges speaks for himself. I think Ke'Bryan is going to be 1-2 in that Gold Glove talk. O'Neal Cruz makes plays that most guys don't. I do think Brian Reynolds is going to serve a better left field than he did center, especially going back to last year. Sawinski, if he gets comfortable in center, Swaggerty coming up at some point. And then I think Smith and Jigma is going to be great and right, and Kutch will be great and right. It's not a lot of land, and it allows both of them to play where I believe they're comfortable. Everything over their head is going to be a double. They can play it off the wall and maybe get some outs at second base if they play that well. And I think Brock's done a great job with the outfielders when he's around to help them play off the wall. That's one of the things I think he does tremendous. So I'm excited about this defense. And then the fact that they actually have Connor Joe, a guy that could come off the bench with some ability to do so, or proven that he's done so, I think also helps defensively and offensively. So I think just the way that they've constructed this team, it's matched up as more of a team. They're not trying to force things. And I think that's really, really good to see. Not to mention Bay's probably our best center fielder if you look at it defensively over time. Not maybe right now, but eventually, just because of how good he can move out there.
You said G1 Bay? G1
Bay. He's really impressive to me when he gets the feel and the angles down, because he makes up so much ground.
Well, for me, center field, I was sold on Swaggerty. I didn't pay as much attention, I guess, in the past, but his arm, his angles, everything he does in center field is, again, I say, for Pirate fans, watch what he does at AAA and hope he tears it up and forces their hand to get him up there in the starting, because I think that's how they win ball games. I don't know. I think the defense is a great unknown. Hedges certainly comes with that track record. He's all defense, which is, if we're talking about just defense, that's good. Santana looks better at first base. He's getting up there. And how many games do you think he's going to play at first base? And if he doesn't play first, who does? Is it Choi, who's not as good defensively? Connor Joe trying to learn first base. He's probably third of that trio. I think they were really pleased with Castro at second base defensively this spring, but they're now leaving this open where it's going to be Castro and Bay to start the year. Mm-hmm. I think they're unsure. Cruz is a great unknown. Again, I hope he ends up being tremendous, but we will see. That shortstop position, this, Fort, certainly have been on that field. When you're about to win a Major League Baseball game in a tight game, and your reliever out there, Bednar, whoever it is, gets that ground ball to the left side of that infield, that shortstop, that second baseman, if it's the other side, has to make that play. It just, a ground ball right at him, that has to be an out. And it'll be interesting to watch. It is an out at third. There's no doubt about that. That's automatic. It was an automatic out when it was hit to Kevin Newman, when it was hit to Clint Barmas, when it was hit to Jordy Mercer, when it was hit to Jay Bell, when it was hit to Tim Foley. Mm-hmm. Look at those teams. Those were winning teams. It's got to be an out. And so we've already talked about left field. I agree with you. Center field, we'll see. In right field, I think because the short portion right, you can get away with not just about anybody, but maybe other players in right field, which is good.
All right, so we're going to wrap up here. I'd like to keep it under an hour. I think that's plenty long, but I wanted to talk about some fun stuff with you, Brownie, specifically you being on the field and doing pregame introductions and that whole thing. And you've got the like music stand, or maybe it's a podium in front of you. And I know you talk in front of people for a living, but generally not live audiences that are 35,000 or whatever, everybody focused on you. Is that moment kind of like, oh, I've done this enough and this is not a habit, but you're comfortable? Or are you in that moment like, oh, wow, this is something? Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's not it was, first couple times it was, wow, what do I do here? But I'm actually more comfortable talking in front of 35 to 40,000 than I am one or two. Okay. And the thing about the stadiums, and it was worse at Three Rivers, it's still not good at PNC Park, is the delay. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking into the microphone at home plate, you're saying the words and it's coming back at you about a second and a half later.
Oh my.
That's the toughest part, is to concentrate on what you're saying, a script or whatever it might be, and not let that, because that will happen during the course of a long introduction. That it's going to get into that ear, and you got to force yourself to concentrate on what you are saying into that microphone and not listen to yourself. It's hard. I thought you were going to ask me, J Mac, about what's going to happen at the home opener on April the 7th. What is going to turn out to be one of the greatest ovations Pittsburgh has ever, and maybe since he was introduced October 1st, 2013, onto the field. I've never seen anything like that. That was, I've gotten emotional during my broadcasting career, almost brought to tears on occasion. I was off the microphone because for that wild card game, Tim Neverett did the pregame and the pre and post game and the middle three innings. So I went in the first inning, but that allowed me to go in an empty booth and watch, which I loved, the proceedings. And when McCutchen came out to that ovation, They almost brought the house down, and what he did was so natural and unscripted. I think it caught him by surprise. He bounced out of that dugout and he did a 360, pounding his chest and pointing to everybody all the way around. It was, again, it brought me to tears. It made me emotional. This is going to be incredible. When that crescendo, I think it's probably going to hit right when I say batting second and playing in left field, Brian Reynolds. At that moment, of course, we're going to cheer Reynolds. They love him. Yeah. But that's going to continue. I might as well not have a microphone because nobody's going to hear it. They're going to go crazy. For how long, I don't know.
And that brings me to something I wanted to ask you, Brownie. Is this year 30? Is that right? 30th?
It's 30th announcing for the Pirates. Yep. Just
describe one or two moments, just like you just did, that will forever be a part of Greg Brown. And like, I don't know, just the love and the soul you've put into this game. Because like every opening day is different. You've been through a lot of different seasons, the ups and downs. But like that moment, I remember it. I teared up. I remember that moment so much. I mean, I was in the dugout. It was one of the first games I was back in the dugout, and it was just remarkable. It felt like an earthquake down on the field. It really did. The shaking of even the rail that I was holding on to, it was literally shaking. I'll never, ever forget it. And like, I can visibly remember looking at you and seeing the emotion from you and across the line that was out there, because I was out on the field later on, and I just was mind boggled with the emotion across the board. I mean, it was just remarkable.
Which makes this game so great. It separates it from every other sport. I'm sorry, there are moments throughout a Major League Baseball game in a season that it's unlike any other sport. There's a connection there that you don't have. It's in the summertime. The players don't have helmets on to block the view, and you get this opportunity to close up, to see the emotion, to be emotional. The story I have is going to go beyond the hour mark, so I might have to just
let it go. Let it go. Let's go.
Well, you asked. You're talking about any moment, not just opening day, right?
Not just opening day. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 30 years, Brownie. I mean, that's remarkable to do anything.
I've told the story. I've told the story actually, and gotten emotional about it in public when I've given talks and spoken in front of crowds. And I've had this guy actually with me. I've introduced him at these moments, and he's gotten emotional because it's truly unbelievable. The John Wayner story. John Wayner grew up in Carrick, a bad part of Pittsburgh. He tells this publicly. He said it often. He's lucky to be alive, and he's not kidding. Many of his friends and relatives dead or in prison. He was so fortunate to make it through hard work, passion for sports and the game, and a good human, good parents. He goes to Indiana University. He's drafted by the team he grew up rooting for and loving. He's a Pittsburgh fanatic to this day. He's a Yinzer, proud of it. He went to every Super Bowl you can imagine, Stanley Cups. Goes, and not only is he drafted by the team he grew up rooting for and loving, which he's got this connection to me. That's what happened to me. He ends up going into the minor leagues, and I meet him in Buffalo, New York, where I'm broadcasting AAA ball, the Pirates organization. And he went up and down for a number of years while I was broadcasting. So I'd say, hey, for a few days, goodbye. Come back, greet him again. He became a friend. And lo and behold, I go up in 1994 to announce Pirates baseball. John, his career from that point, he becomes kind of bouncing around. He ends up going to the Marlins. Leland loved him, brought him. He actually had to retire because nobody wanted him anymore. He started playing what was like a beer league softball, in beer league softball. And injuries happen. The Pirates need to sign to a minor league contract. He's playing Double-A Altoona. He's tearing it up. There are injuries. He starts climbing the ladder again. He winds up with the Pirates again. Of all things, in 2000, the year 2000, he's playing on the Pirates team in September of that year. He had a total of 4 home runs in his entire career. As you guys know, he's a utility player. Didn't start a lot.
Yeah.
When he did, he was a fine defender, but wasn't much of a hitter. He bounced around, could sure glove. The last game of the season, October 1st, 2000, is the last game ever in the history of Three River Stadium. Gene Lamont, with a touch of class, decides it's a meaningless game against the Cubs. I'm going to start John Wehner at third base. What a brilliant move by a great man, by the way, Gene Lamont. He knows how meaningful that is. So he starts him at third base. Now, I have these scorecards. This is not the one I used that night. I'm not a collector, but I decided to take a blank scorecard like this, and I go around to each position and have each player sign his position, including John Wehner at third base, just for a keepsake. And as I'm talking to John, I say, how incredible is this moment for you? And he, you know, John, self-defacing humor, but he puts his head down. He kind of, it shocks you. Oh, geez, it's unbelievable. I can't believe Lamont doing this. I love Gino for doing this. And, all the players are getting on me. They should, I should try to hit a home run. And I laugh with him and we chuckle. And I say, well, good luck. I go up to the press room at Three River Stadium, which is behind home plate on the third level. And I sit down to dinner with Walkie and Lanny, and I believe our broadcasting director, Mark Garda. And I'm telling Walkie the story. And of course, Walkie and Wehner were teammates. And we both laugh about the fact that they wanted to hit a home run. That's hilarious. So go up to the TV booth. I'm in TV that night with Steve Blass and Nellie King. Nellie King was a longtime broadcaster with Bob Prince and a former Pirate pitcher. They decided to bring Nellie in to join Steve. They could wax poetic, talk about the glory days of Three River Stadium. And they're talking about it. Now, at Three River Stadium, the TV booth is on the fourth level. The radio booth is on the third level. It's a stairway that takes you down 2 flights. So you can walk up the steps behind home plate and get to the radio booth. Game's going on. It's about the 7th inning. 60,000 people going crazy, saying goodbye to this great stadium. John Wehner gets up with 2 men on base and 2 outs. And Blass and Nellie reminiscing. John Lieber pitching, a former Pirate, throws this fastball to John Wehner. And Mac Fort, you've talked about this before. Athletes talked about it before. Never knew what it meant. But when you're going good, when a moment happens, time slows down, it almost stands still. I know Maz talked about that when he hit the home run. He was floating around the bases. Doesn't remember it. Wehner takes this swing, and I'm watching it, and to this day, it was as if it was traveling in slow motion. Because I'm saying to myself, there's no way that ball leaves this stadium. That would be impossible. This guy doesn't hit home runs. He doesn't start. He's a Pittsburgh guy, a Pirate fan. Last game through River Stadium, no way. Boom, line drive home run. The place erupts. I, of course, go completely out of my mind bonkers. John floats around the bases. He would say later, the only time he's ever cried maybe in his life, let alone on a baseball field, was when he took the field the next half inning and the stadium erupted again. He had to tip his cap at third base. Between innings, the last out is made now. The Pirates go on the field. I take my headset off. I look at Blass. I can't believe it. I turn around, and the back of the TV booth is Bob Walk. He had run up the steps from the radio booth to join me. I jumped into his arms, and it was like Blass jumping into Bob Robertson's arms, Game 7 of the 71 World Series. And we're both bawling our eyes out. The greatest moment in sports history for me.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow. I've never heard you tell that story.
Yeah.
Brownie.
I'll tell you what, Ford, I will say this. I had not thought about this till your home run was pretty close in my eyes to that moment. I didn't know you as well, but I know your story. And when you hit that home run off Carlos Marmol, who was maybe the best closer in the game at that point, and knowing how close we were to winning the Pirates, that was a seminal moment for the Pirates to turn the tide, and in your career, that was incredible.
I'll tell you right now, Brownie, I can't. Just you bringing it up brings tears to my eyes, and I think because of how much I've fallen in love with the city and fallen in love with you, and just what it means to be a winner here. I've done some speaking events and they surprised me with that, and Brownie, tears just start streaming down my eyes because feeling and that embrace. I can only imagine what it was like with John Wayner, 60,000, and what it felt like for you, because like that moment was, I mean, something I can literally stay up at night just thinking about constantly. It's amazing.
Fort, by the way, great post-game quote that night. That's a little boy dream of mine. He said, you see Cal Ripken and big name people do it. I got one and I'm 26 years old. I got a little over 2 months in the big leagues. It's awesome.
You know,
nice
that
post-game interview setting.
Oh,
you think about those moments. These are, if you look at the Pirate record for both of those years, Wayner's home run, McKenry's home run, look at the record. People would go, why do you care about the Pirates? Take a look at those moments.
Yeah.
If you were at this stadium the night that Michael McKenry hit that home run, you'll never forget it. Yep. It was Carlos Marmol. It was the Cubs, a huge crowd. People could sense around Pirate Land that they were starting to turn the corner. And here's this guy, McKenry, the Fort, who had bounced around other teams, left in the scrap heap. Pirates, because of emergencies, have all these catchers getting hurt, and they go through 8 catchers. They have to get McKenry in there, not necessarily a home run hitter, known for his defense. Pittsburgh quickly falls in love with him. He gets up there against the best closer in the league, and it's a game-winning, what turned out to be game-winning home run. Those are the moments. That's why you fall in love with the team and the Pirate, and that's why Pirate fans fell in love with the Fort.
I appreciate it. And that call you made. Let's not forget about that.
Well,
that call
it's always it's funny how great a broadcaster I was during the winning years and during moments like that. People say, boy, you've never sounded so good.
Yeah.
Right. No kidding.
You know, I feel like you're onto something. That opening day in April when they announced cuts right after Reynolds, I do think, I kind of hope there's a calm, just a slight calm, and then an eruption.
Yeah, there will be.
There will be.
Yep.
It's going to be really insane. Man, that was a great story. Mackie, I feel like I don't deserve what just happened. That was amazing.
You do.
Wow.
You do. And that's
should deserve it. You did it.
Yeah.
Fine point, Brownie.
Fine point. He's full of those.
No, I think we leave it there. It's why this game is so beautiful. It's why opening day matters. I used to joke with my buddies growing up playing, like there's just something different when baseball season is starting versus when baseball season is not going on. I am a firm believer in that. There's something in the air, man. And I don't care if it's 40, I don't care if it's 75. There's just some magical switch that flips. I don't know if I'll be like you, Brownie, tonight, if I won't be able to sleep. Maybe I have sleeping problems anyway. That's a whole separate discussion. I know this, that once baseball season starts in my world, and I think I speak for both of you guys on this, it just feels like everything is right again. And anybody who says it doesn't matter or I don't care, all that crap, those are arguments that I rail against on Twitter with coverage, with how people – I see that people care. I see –
Well, they're not telling the truth. They're not being truthful when they say that.
Right.
And many are jealous, by the way. Keep that in mind. There's a lot of jealousy. People that might not be baseball fans or Pirate fans are so jealous of us that jump on board with this team. They can't figure it out. They keep losing, but they get so frustrated. They don't realize that that's what makes this sport so great. It's not because you're going to jump on the bandwagon when they win. It's because you go out there every night thinking the possibilities they could win. And when they do, I invested my time during the losing. You know how much better I'm going to feel, how much joy, much more joy, because I didn't just jump on the bandwagon. I've been with this team through thick and thin. They get very jealous of that.
You know, my wife had an unbelievable comment one time. She said the depths of the valleys make the mountaintops that much sweeter. And that's exactly what's happening with the Pirates.
Here.
Yep, it's coming. It is coming.
Switch her out on the podcast.
I try. She's
Can
better looking, better spoken. Yeah, all the above. Yeah, you're welcome, babe.
Good luck trying to book that guest. You know how much money she costs to get on a podcast?
I know. She's high class. It's just the way it goes.
Deserving of that.
That's outstanding, man.
All
this
right.
was awesome.
This really was, Brownie. Thank you so much. I know you have
Thanks,
other
guys.
things to do, and thank you for hopping on here and enlightening us. I love it.
Well, thanks for the invitation, and a happy opening day, you guys.
Hey, you too, and you're always welcome, Brownie.
Thank you.
Always. You're the best.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.